A combination of raw beauty and a peaceful serenity found nowhere else on Earth, the Hana Coast is the most remarkable part of the Hawaiian island of Maui. Pacific trade winds bring a combination of sun, rains, and mists to a coastline of incomparable tropical forests, lush valleys, rugged lava rock cliffs, and hidden coves and beaches. Mile after mile, this scenic wonderland unfolds in a constantly changing array of color and texture, a visual feast never to be forgotten. An untouched corner of Hawaii, the Hana Coast is set apart by a serpentine stretch of road, marked with curves and switchbacks too numerous to count. More than 50 single-lane bridges and spectacular cascading waterfalls. The drive can take as long as 3 hours to cover just 55 miles, but most visitors find it a small price to pay for a trip to paradise. The Hana Highway, unlike most roadways, is itself a unique moving attraction. Geographically, the Hana Coast stretches from the beaches and sugarcane fields near Paia in the north to the barren lava flows beyond Kaupo in the south. In between is the most easterly point of Maui, dominated by the singular town of Hana, a rural community where the spirit and aloha of old Hawaii lives on. As it skirts the sea and the sprawling flanks of Haleakala Crater, the highway is flanked by overgrown gullies and forested ridges, a majestic showcase of nature. As you drive along, you can reach back in time, imagining the days when villagers used outrigger canoes and rugged foot trails to travel from village to village. When a dirt road opened in 1927, the first motorist to complete the journey joined the jubilant residents for a parade and a luau that lasted for 2 full days. For most who experience the Hana Coast, the journey begins in Paia, the first town east of Kahului, Maui's commercial center, and the site of most airline arrivals and departures. Although it seems a laid-back town today, Paia once hosted more than 10,000 immigrant field workers who came to work on the booming sugar plantations in the area. Today's downtown Paia is a colorful assortment of windsurfing shops, health food restaurants, art and crafts galleries, and clothing boutiques. There are also a couple of gas stations and small markets, and Paia is where most travelers stop to fill the gas tank, buy film, and stock up on picnic items for the many parks, waysides, bridges, and scenic overlooks on the trip ahead. Allowing for the abundance of stops and temptations that await, prudent drivers allow a full day for the Hana journey, an adventure that invites one to pause frequently, to let the Hana Coast's expansive views, vibrant colors, intriguing smells and sounds become a collective experience. Besides being the first stop on the journey, Paia is also an excellent area from which to observe the 10,000-foot summit of Haleakala, the enormous dormant volcano that dominates East Maui, and over thousands of years has generated the lava which has formed the incredible topography of the Hana Coast. If you like beaches, 2 of the best along the coast are right near Paia. Baldwin Park, a smooth stretch of soft sand and gentle surf, popular with families, and world-famous Ho'okipa Beach, where surfers and windsurfers love to skim the powerful waves generated by distant storms. Ho'okipa's waves are always beautiful in their shape, color, and dynamic movement, a kinetic dimension of beauty on this coast. When the wind is up, the waves are dotted with brilliant sails and boards of the windsurfing crowd, and the beach provides a perfect vantage spot. International championships are held here, and many consider this the best windsurfing spot in the world. Just outside the little town of Paia, the Mantokugi Buddhist mission, with its shapely oriental architecture, colorful cemetery, and authentic ceremonial gong, reminds us of the great numbers of Japanese laborers who came to work in the nearby sugarcane fields. Even today, sugar is the #1 cash crop in Hawaii, and more than 50,000 acres of Maui land are planted with sugarcane. On any day, you'll be sure to see some aspect of the planting or harvesting operation going on. All the fields are irrigated, and it takes a ton of water just to grow 1 pound of refined sugar. The mills where they crush the sugar out of the cane operate almost around the clock, pushing Maui's total raw sugar yield to more than 300,000 tons a year. Soon the Hana Highway swoops into a great slice of the mountain called Maliko Gulch. Among the coconut trees at the bay is a small horse corral that belongs to the Maui Roping Club. Horseback riding is a popular Maui pastime, and many rodeos are held each year. But these horses don't look like they're anticipating much action today. Shortly after Maliko Gulch, roadside patchworks of pineapple fields signal the Haiku area, a bastion of small, independent farmers. Pineapple is the #2 cash crop in the islands, and although it takes 18 months to produce 1 fruit, these fields are very productive. Each acre yields about 50 tons of market-ready pineapple. Here, the climate is already very different from Maui's semi-arid Central Valley. Cooler and more humid, the Haiku area receives about 50 inches of rain a year. Here, the sea is fronted by high ocean cliffs and waterfalls which plunge directly into the waves, crashing against the rocky headlands. To the uninitiated, this is the last easy section to drive until one reaches Hana Town. As the hurried world slips away, travelers are confronted with new sights and smells. A gradual transformation as the road moves along Haleakala's steepening flank. Seaward of the road, the coast is steep and lush, perfect for picture taking, but worthy of a little extra caution. The sign that means what it says, narrow, winding road. For the dizzying succession of switchback turns and single-lane bridges from this point on are designed to slow even the most persistent traffic. The Kailua Church, built in 1853, is close by in Huelo. This well-preserved building is one of the many signs of early Christian influence that dot the Maui landscape, mostly in the form of old wood, stone, or coral churches. 2 miles further down the road, the town of Kailua appears with its tall stands of bamboo and pastel-colored eucalyptus trees. This is also the headquarters for the East Maui Irrigation Company, the system pioneered by Henry Baldwin in 1876 that still diverts water to central Maui's cane fields via miles of tunnels, pipes, flumes, and ditches. Kailua is a company town where most of the local residents work to maintain this incredibly engineered water system. So quiet today there isn't even a store, Kailua has experienced a dramatic change from the early 1900s, when it was literally the end of the road and the site of a prison work camp. Now the highway winds through moist lowland forests with few open fields. Vegetation is wild and varied, many plants introduced over the years from other parts of the world: Asia, Australia, South America, and of course Polynesia. This is the Waikamoe area, and there are hiking trails here that penetrate far into the lush green innerlands of Haleakala. Hardy walkers can follow these paths, listening to the wind humming through giant stands of bamboo and plunging waterfalls hidden in the forest depths. This is the real tropical paradise of Maui, quite different from the resorts and golf courses found on the other side of the island. Not far from this point, Maui's Botanical Wonderland achieves an even greater dimension, first at Kaumahina State Park. And then a few turns down the road at K&I Arboretum, both boasting a profusion of native and introduced plants, well worth exploring. Along this portion of the Hana Coast, there are also numerous waterfalls to view and photograph, many of them plunging into tempting swimming holes. Others are inaccessible, flanked by sheer cliffs and rampant tropical vegetation. It rains almost daily here, and this dramatic terrain allows us to imagine the difficulties faced by the original ditch digging and highway construction crew. It was not until 1962 that the road was paved over with asphalt. Now, as it continues to snake eastward to Hana Town and beyond, the highway clings precariously to plunging 300-foot sea cliffs, the highest along the journey. U-shaped Honolulu Bay appears, indenting this palisaded coastline by 1/3 of a mile. With its deep sparkling waters, rolling surf, and rocky sand beach, Honolulu is quite breathtaking. The valley facing the bay is enormous, the second largest on Haleakala's northern slope, and the road makes many twists and turns as it descends almost to sea level and then rises again on the other side. A small dirt road leads to the beach, a nice place to pause and bask in the beauty of this unforgettable spot. No spot along the Hana Coast is more impressive than Kailua Peninsula. According to Hawaiian legend, this was the first place on Maui to be blessed with fresh water, when the great god Kane, accompanied by the god of creation Kailua, is said to have pierced a solid rock with his great wooden staff to bring forth gushing sweet water. And whether you believe the legend or not, geologically speaking, Kailua presents an outstanding example of Maui's volcanic origins. Immense lava flows erupted from Haleakala's huge caldera, streaming down the mountainside and spilling into the ocean to create this wave-tossed peninsula. Watching the surf crash against Kailua's jagged lava rock shore, it's easy to imagine the fiery molten rock tumbling into the deep cold waters amid roaring clouds of steam. Today, of course, this cliff-flanked lava riverway, the Ko'olau Gap, is completely covered in lush vegetation bursting from every rock and crevice. Meanwhile, steady northwest trade winds, over 150 inches of rain per year, and the relentless surf have combined to carve Kailua's black coastline into a fascinating array of shapes. Once encircled with fish ponds and home to thousands of native Hawaiians, this fertile village counts about 50 families, nearly all of them Hawaiian, most of whom still fish and farm in traditional ways. Visitors are few, and the traditions of living with the land, of fishing, working in the taro fields, and gathering opihi from the rocky shoreline live on. Almost everyone is related, and those who live in Kailua would choose no other spot on earth. Built in 1860, the same year that Abraham Lincoln was elected president, the inspiring Kailua Congregational Church is a historic landmark, the only structure spared when, without warning, a powerful tsunami swept over the peninsula in 1946, claiming many lives. Immediately adjacent, the town of Wailua is also removed from many of the trappings of modern life. Residents here still tell the story of an ocean storm that tossed up the coral which enabled their ancestors to build St. Gabriel's Church, one of the earliest stops for the first Catholic priests arriving on Maui. Just a few miles down the road is the Nahiku area, certainly the rainiest section of the Hana Coast, and in the 1900s, a thriving rubber plantation town boasting more than 25,000 producing trees. But due to a combination of insoluble problems, the operation was soon disbanded. Look around though, and you may still find some rubber trees that survive. If you're looking for waterfalls, there are plenty to enjoy along this section of the road. The most ideal conditions for viewing, of course, are when the sun shines just after a heavy rain. And the more rain, the bigger the falls. There's a narrow road off the main highway that curves down to a portion of the Nahiku coastline. While there is no beach, the overlook provides some spectacular views not normally seen by most travelers. Back on the Hana Highway, another business venture takes advantage of the area's abundant rainfall. You might almost miss Ali'i Gardens driving by, but this operation is one of the most successful in the islands, growing a seemingly endless variety of vividly colorful tropical flowers and foliage that is in demand by florists in cities all over the world. Along this section of the highway, large banyan trees grow on both sides of the road, their extensive aerial root systems dropping to the ground as they continue to grow both laterally and vertically. As we draw closer to Hana, groves of macadamia nut trees begin to appear, planted relatively recently and just starting to produce. Another turnoff takes visitors down to Wainapanapa State Park, 120 acres of land that has been preserved not only for the natural beauty of the area, but also for numerous historical and archaeological sites to be found here. There is a fine black sand beach at Wainapanapa, and legends abound relating to the nearby freshwater caves, a part of a labyrinth of eroded lava tubes, natural arches, and irregular islets that lie along this picturesque coastline. Also in this area lies the Pi'ilani Heiau, Hawaii's largest ancient temple site. Now reconstructed and on the National Register of Historic Places, the massive man-made structure, built entirely of lava rocks, has dimensions larger than a football field and supports continued archaeological exploration into the life and culture of the Hawaiian people of old. Now we've arrived at Hana, the most easterly point of Maui. To the Hawaiian people, Hana means a peaceful and secluded bay, where the sun is warm and living is easy. But Hana is more. Here, against the rolling green flanks of Haleakala and surrounded by the deep blue sea, a smiling and genuine people, a village where children are healthy and happy, and a natural lifestyle goes on undisturbed. Rich in legend and with stories of battles lost and won by Maui's ancient chieftains, Hana has long been known as a place where energies are renewed. The Hawaiian demigod, Maui, is said to have been born here. And in ancient times, Hawaii's royalty, the Ali'i, regularly visited Hana to refresh their spirits. With just over 1,000 residents, Hana is a living repository of Hawaiian customs and traditions. Kindness, friendliness, and the spirit of aloha are very much alive and well in this gentle, rural outpost. People who live in Hana seem to share a common happiness and joyful spirit that is unhurried and genuine. Its mood is congenial, and life here flows pretty much as it has for centuries. Activities are often decided by the state of the weather, or simply what people feel like doing. Independent and industrious, Hana folks also make sure there is plenty of time to fish, hunt pigs in the forest, grow flowers, fix the house, raise a family, and help a neighbor. A true sense of community exists here, and you'll sense right away that the spirit of aloha is alive and well here in Hana. So be sure to let your own smile be genuine and your pace unhurried. The dominant economic factors in Hana are Hana Ranch and the Hotel Hana Maui, both created by San Francisco entrepreneur Paul Fagan in 1946. The activities of the ranch and the hotel offer employment for most of the local population. Numbering some 4,600 acres, Hana Ranch is a major producer of cattle on the island of Maui. It wasn't always a cattle ranch. Up until the 1940s, it was all sugarcane in Hana, but more about that later. The Hotel Hana Maui serves as the center of Hana's social life, with its excellent restaurants, hay rides and luau's, and renowned picnics and trail rides. Guests return again and again from all over the world to enjoy its special bungalows and deluxe rooms, and a chance to renew old friendships with the people of Hana. A prominent landmark is the fortress hill called Kauiki, a large cinder cone at Hana Bay which served as a lookout for protection against invading Hawaiian chiefs arriving by sea. Kahekili, Maui's last chieftain, won a major battle here, and Kauiki was also the birthplace of one of Hawaii's most powerful figures. Born in a cave on this ocean point, a young girl named Ka'ahumanu went on to become queen to Kamehameha the Great, and the most powerful woman in Hawaii. Her later conversion to Christianity marked the end of the ancient religion and changed the course of the islands for all time. Some other notable landmarks in Hana. Fagan's Cross, a memorial to the man who founded the cattle ranch and the world-famous hotel. St. Mary's Catholic Church, and just across the street, Wananalua Congregational Church. Hasegawa General Store, and the old sugar pier at Hana Bay. So relax a moment, soak up the sights, and enjoy the peaceful moods of this most isolated, most tropical, most friendly, most laid back, and most Hawaiian community of Maui as we visit and talk story with some of its most interesting inhabitants.
Aloha. My name is Paniani Malaikini, or better known as Taini. I was born and raised in Hana. I'd like to invite you along a journey with me on the Hana Coast, and we'll see some very special places. We'll also meet some very special people, some friends of mine, some family of mine, and we'll stop along the way and we'll talk story with them. So come with me.
On the Hana Road, a small number of local fruit stands invite visitors to stop for small purchases or just to say hello. One of the most colorful was owned by longtime Hana resident Harry Mitchell.
Okay, aloha, ladies and gentlemen. One of our journeys right now is down in Ke'anai. And speaking of Ke'anai, we must also mention Uncle Harry Mitchell here, who owns this fruit stand. He opens from 9:30 to 4 o'clock. Uncle Mitchell, aloha no.
Yeah, aloha.
Hi. Okay, tell me a little bit about taro. You know, I know you eat there.
Well, taro is a main staple food, you know, Hawaiian. This is a chrome, a taro chrome, eh? And they make chips. That's what I'm eating here. You can make taro chips. For me, I usually fry them in the morning about 180, but you have to cook it first, about 2 hours. Take out all the green, because it's itchy, eh? And this also medicinal plant. Like, then we turn them into poi. After 2 hours, we clean them up, we mash it up. You know, the old ways, eh? I had a stone over here. I think my son sold it. Everything he sells.
What about the leaf?
We use the luau leaf, and then the stalk, you know, the juice. We use that for sanapi bites, scorpion insect bite, yeah? That quickly go away. It's a good. And then for people who eat poi, you don't find them getting stomach ulcer. You know, it's a staple. This is what brought up our nation. Mind you, this thing that grows in the ground, yeah? We had more people living then than today.
And of course, you can buy books here, lots of hand carving that was done by Uncle Harry, lots of blow shells over there, lots of food, and Christmas time ornaments right around the corner, and this is an ideal place to come. And again, Uncle Harry, I thank you.
People ask us, why don't you expand? I say, I don't want to get brain damage, you know. I just keep it cool, you know, just keep it cool. Nice. Low key. Hawaiian ways, low key. Keep it cool.
I'm standing right in the front of this beautiful grass shack here. This grass that I'm feeling here is called a pili grass. And the old Hawaiians use this grass to make this hale here, which is what I'm trying to explain to you. It has been raining for some, maybe 4 or 5 days in Ke'anai. But we walked in here just a few minutes ago, and the whole floor is all dry. And so is the display that Uncle Harry has over here for the people to look at. And it's very dry. This is seems like impossible. But talking to Uncle Harry earlier, he said as the years go by and when this grass gets drier and drier, it kind of melts into each other, and this melting here retains the water from ever coming into the hale. Again, this is what the old Hawaiians used to build in the days of Kamehameha. This is a grass shack. This is a small grass shack. Uncle Harry says that if he ever kicked out from his big house, this is where he'll stay.
The churches of Hana are very important focal points in the social life of the community. The Congregational Wailua Church in the center of town and opposite the hotel was built in 1838.
Aloha again. Our journey takes us now in the front yard of a beautiful Wailua Church in the back here. Like a lifetime residents of Hana, standing alongside me is one of the most people that we kind of depend on. First of all, she used to be our maitre d' in Hotel Hana Maui, and she retired some years ago. Now she's down at the Hana Chevron, running the Chevron station with her husband. By the way, her husband at one time used to be our minister over here. And while she was working with us in the dining room, she was better known as Mother. So at this time, I would like to say aloha, Mama, and how are you? It's been so long since we last said aloha. Tell me a little bit about our church over here, this Protestant church, and I remember a little bit about our community hall in the back here. So maybe you can fill us guys in.
Well, when I came to Hana, I was just out of school, 8th grade. Then I came here to work in the cane field, as all the plantations use the young people to come and clean the weeds in a young cane. So I was one of them. And then a teacher, Mrs. Rosaline Akana, found me at my aunt's house. And she said if I would work for her. And I thought working in a home was beautiful for me. And I thought, well, maybe I would earn more money. But when I found out I was making better money working, pulling the weeds in a cane, 4 cents for 100 feet pulling the weeds. But anyway, I stayed with her for a whole year, took care of her children, did the laundry and everything a maid should do. And at one time, there was a dance over here, right in this place over here. That's where I met my husband, and it was the Kahakulo group that came that time. And later, a couple of months later, Henry and I got married. We got married in 1935, and I lived in Hana since then. To me, Hana is a place where everybody lives together. You see somebody in need of help, you go and help. And everybody get together when they have a time to get together, like luau's and inviting people to their homes.
As I said earlier, Mrs. Kahula has raised and born in Hana. She loves this place just as much as I do. We are the roots of Hana, and again, we are talking to you from the Wailua Church over here, which has been up since 1838. And again, Mama, thank you for your time, and we hope to see you soon.
Aloha.
We're at the little peninsula out here in Waikoloa. We have some changes that I've known have happened in this area. For instance, the old Waikoloa village over here used to be a home for all the old-time Hawaiians and visitors that we have. But now I noticed that teenagers and up and above are now coming into this area, which is just beautiful for us. And talking about the changes, I have seen some changes, Pake. For instance, I remember growing up, we not only used to swim where the kids are swimming now, but we also used to lay net or koko, which was hukilau. And right where the truck is at Popolana,
Popolana.
we used to run across, but the beach was big, was more outside, right where this wave is coming in now, was big, and we used to call it the O'opu Pond, because Penny O'opu.
Right.
But we used to run across, especially when you get big water used to come down, and we had to try to get across before it broke, you know? And you know, every kid Yeah, we stay at your box so we can go to school. Yeah? And this is what we used to do. And it's the same until today. Only today you gotta go to school because we go on back road.
You have to, yeah.
The back side.
I didn't quite realize how fortunate I was until I was able to go away to school in Honolulu. And I went to Kamehameha School for 6 years, and it's a private school. But being away from home, you don't realize how fortunate you are to grow up in a place like Hana. To others, when they first come here, of course it's beautiful. It's breathtaking to a lot of older people. But when I was growing up, you just kind of take things for granted. And I realized the difference in Honolulu and here is, you know, when I grew up, I was able to go down to the beach and stay there all day. And my parents had no fear of when I was alone because I was always with other children. And we would stay down there all day. You didn't need money. You go get, what, pomani nuts and eat that. And, or else you would go to a friend's house and there was always food for you. But we stayed out all day and they'd come and look for you, but they knew exactly where you were.
The thing we're trying to stress to our kids is when you come back, you're gonna love Hana more. How can you love Hana more if you don't know what it's like, yeah?
Right.
On the other side. We have the right place
To raise
our
children. Yeah,
I wouldn't trade Hana for any place in this piece of earth.
No trip to Hana is complete without stopping at the famous Hasegawa store. This very small country store overflows with merchandise and a spirit of aloha that has made it a legend, even immortalized in a song. Whatever you need, either Harry Hasegawa, the friendly proprietor, already has it, or he'll find it.
Standing beside me is the owner and the manager and everything else of this very popular store in Hana. This is called the Hasegawa's General Store, and I would like to say aloha, Harry.
Hi, Tony.
And maybe you can tell our people a little bit, or plenty, about Hana and your feeling towards Hana.
Well, Hana is the place where I was born. My father was born here, and we've been here since about 1910. We like the area real much, and it's something that I think is very special. We haven't changed very much, and I think it's for the better that we didn't change very much.
Again, Harry, I want to thank you to being part of Hana. Like myself, I'm a native of Hana, and you're a native of Hana, and we kind of strive side by side in our relationship towards the community. We thank you again.
Okay,
Let's go.
Thanks.
After stocking up at Harry's, our journey can continue. Some of the most exciting parts of the Hana Coast still lie ahead. Tucked within a semicircular cove carved from the cliffs just a few miles outside of Hana town is Hamoa, described by author James Michener as the most beautiful beach in the Pacific. A place where no one needs an excuse to linger all day. Legendary Alau Island, a quarter-mile offshore from Hamoa Beach Road, sits at the outside of a rocky and sometimes very treacherous channel. It's a pretty spot, but certainly no place for a casual swim. Alau Island's summit, 150 feet high, is crowned by a growing family of coconut palms. Crashing waves against its shore create a surrounding garland of white foam. Now we are headed in a southerly direction into the area known as Kippahulu. The roadway beyond Hana town is a very bumpy, very twisting, and very slow drive. Though it has lots of scenic rewards at every bend, Kippahulu is clearly not just around the corner from Hana town. Kippahulu offers singular isolation, grandeur, and lushness. Here you can literally feel the rain and salty wind and marvel at the panorama of mountain peaks, deep valleys, inaccessible waterfalls, and pools. Here, the forces of nature are working daily, continuing to reshape the island as they have for countless centuries. One of the most popular of the scenic attractions is Wailua Falls, a much photographed site named for the two streams that flow into Wailua Valley below. Wailua's plunging 100-foot beauty is easily viewed from the roadway's concrete bridge, surrounded by a forest of kukui trees, wild ginger, and breadfruit. Yes, there is a trail that leads to the base of the falls, but it's often a showery and slippery excursion, so caution is the byword for anyone venturing closer. Nearby, a wayside Catholic shrine watches over the narrow road. A little harder to find, another landmark is the old Kippahulu sugar mill, a reminder that growing and harvesting sugarcane was once big business here, beginning around 1880 and continuing until around 1925. The combined costs of transportation and labor forced the mill to finally close, and only its crumbling machinery and landmark 90-foot smokestack remain.
I think the Hawaiians and the people that built this mill were very, very photographic in what they were going to do. As you can see, the pillars up here is still as strong as the first day they built. A lot of cement over here that is still here. The big foundation in the back of me looked like it was just put a couple of months ago. I think the way they figured that after they build this would be last forever, or at least 100 and something years. And it could have. I guess it could have if they had a way of sending the raw product over to the mainland to have it refined. Most of the sugar was sent to Hana, although we had a pier down here, Kipahulu Pier, which also took on the sugar. But like Hana Pier, the boats couldn't come in and tie up when it gets rough, and it does get radically rough at times. Most of the boats, I think, were on contract. This too had affected the industry. If you come up here for 7 days, this is all you got. Within 7 days, you got to load up your boat or your contract is over. And I think percentage of the boat went back to Honolulu without the cargo that they were coming over to pick up. Again, although the mill has somewhat dwelled, but I think the people of Kippahulu have found memories of this mill here. I could just kind of turn back the pages of history. I guess in the 20s and in the 30s, where they must have a couple of thousand, 3,000-4,000 people living in this area. Imagine in the 1920s when this mill was being put together, they had no road as we see today. It was just a trail that leads from here to Hana. And most of the equipment, most of what we see here, the big machines, the heavy cements, and what makes a mill, was brought in by ocean and was brought in through the pier down here at Kippahulu. And again, it involves a lot of hard work, a lot of manpower, because there was no machinery. We must keep in mind, today we have a good road, we have lots of heavy equipment, machinery, we have electricity going down. The days when they built this was all by hand. Everything was done by manpower until they could, I guess, set up their own, some sort of a power over here, which kind of supplies this cannery. But like in Hana, the road did not open until 1929, and I suppose the road did not open over here at 1929, but way after 1929, could be 30, 35, 36, around there someplace. But if we could turn back we turn back the history, turn back the pages of history, we cannot appreciate what the old folks did. I mean, look at this beautiful building. Of course, we're looking at the ruin now, but let's picture this when it was in operation. And they built this just with the bare hands and the slave over what we have today.
Charles Lindbergh was known as a hero to millions the world over for his historic solo airplane flight across the Atlantic Ocean in 1927. In 1974, knowing of his incurable cancer, he made a last flight to Hana, where he elected to spend his last days in privacy and solitude with friends and family. As he requested, a rough-hewn wooden coffin resting in the rear of a pickup truck took him to his final resting site in a small churchyard in Kippahulu, where those who wish can pay their respects. Finally, we arrive at Oheo, site of the celebrated 7 pools of Oheo Gulch. 12 miles from Hana, and at the edge of the Haleakala National Park, Oheo is for most visitors the last stop in their long journey along the Hana Coast. Travel past Oheo to Kaupo is forbidden by the rental car companies, but many attempt the drive anyway. This prolific valley has yielded one of the great erosional marvels of the world, a succession of waterfalls and mountain pools that cascade to the sea in graceful terraces. Actually, Oheo Stream has gouged out as many as 20 pools within its lowest mile, and many more over its entire length. Some are large enough for swimming. Others are small and scenic, perfect for picture taking or just meditating on the sight and sound of the flowing water. If it's a sunny day, you'll find dozens of sunbathers lounging on the rocky shore or diving off into the cool, clear water. Most of those who come to the 7 pools congregate in the waters and on the rocks just above and just below the bridge. But the real adventurers take to the innerlands to explore the area further. For those interested in hiking, a rewarding half-mile walk, clearly marked with signs, leads from the parking lot and through the pasture lands to Waimoku Falls, which plunges more than 185 feet into one of Oheo's most turbulent pools. Further along the trail, actually almost 4 miles further, is the spectacular Waimoku Falls. The hike features several crossings of the stream, often muddy passages through bamboo forests, and other unpredictable hazards. But the reward of seeing this, the second highest waterfall on Maui, is worth every footstep. Beyond Kippahulu, the road is in a state best negotiated by a Jeep or other 4-wheel drive vehicle. Seasonal storms and high surf often make this section of the Hana Road impassable for weeks or even months. Here on Haleakala's south slope, far from the rain-bearing northeast trade winds, the land was once covered with native dryland forest, later destroyed by the introduction of goats and pigs. And the area is fissured with dry gullies ranging to over 200 feet deep in many places. The remains of many extensive coastal Hawaiian villages can be found here, silent testimony to the fact that a burgeoning population once existed. Here too, the potholed gravel roadway is no longer officially called the Hana Highway, but is now Kaupo Road. Bounded on one side by cliffs and on the other by an unrailed, steep face to the sea, it's a wonder a road exists at all. Mile after mile of washboard road can be trying to even the sturdiest vehicle, not to mention the concentration needed to just avoid driving off a cliff. Out here, you notice traffic is very sparse. Hui Aloha Church, located on a rocky point called Mokulao Peninsula, provides a windy but restful spot for the intrepid explorer. Hui Aloha means a gathering place of love, and within this unpretentious stone-walled chapel, a handful of Kaupo residents occasionally come to worship, always mindful of the church's fascinating history. Well, this area is called Mokulao. It's part of the Kaupo district of Hana, the Hana Coast, and there used to be a lot of Hawaiians living out here, living in the old way. There was never any plantation out here, no sugar or pineapple. There's been cattle out here for many, many years, but as times began to change along the Hana Coast and the lure of jobs at the sugar plantations in Hana and Kippahulu and elsewhere began to draw the Hawaiians from Kaupo, little by little there was no one left, and the old churches, such as this one here, Hui Aloha Church, were left behind with no congregation. And a group of us a few years ago began looking at these old buildings rather than as churches with living congregations and so forth, rather as monuments to the difficulty that was involved in building them and the dedication it took to get materials and workmen in a place like this. And we decided to restore this church. It took us 4 years in the making to do it. We finished a few years back, and we've now started another one up the road, a Catholic church, St. Joseph's, and we hope that in a few years that both of them will stand for a long, long time as kind of a memory of what was once here in Kaupo. Little story about working here. One of the first days we came down here, we were privileged to have 2 Hawaiian women, both of whom have now passed on with us, and both of whose fathers had been ministers here. And we decided that we were making a short film, as a matter of fact, to help raise money to restore the church. And we decided we wanted to have the church bell ring. And 2 of us climbed up into the steeple and found it was very scary in there. It was, of course, completely dark and very termite-eaten, and the steeple was leaning at a very precarious angle in those days. But we decided we wanted to make the bell ring and make a recording of it, so we got up in there and we started working on it to break the rust free. It hadn't rung, and nobody could remember how long it had been since they'd heard the bell ring in Kaupo. And after a great deal of yanking and tugging and rust grating and so forth, it finally broke loose and the bell started to ring, and the old ladies that were with us started to cry, Daisy Kekoanui and Alice Apo, and we started to cry, and it was really quite a moment. Really made it a good beginning for the project. Church is used seldom now, but it is used. But it is more of an inspiration to people that come and visit here. A place that stands for a part of Hawaii that is no more. The Kaupo store is only in operation for 1 or 2 hours a day, but if you're lucky, you may find them open for refreshments. Unbroken stretches of open road beckon the explorer beyond Kaupo, and many visitors enjoy the vistas to be found here. Almost barren flows of lava spreading to a deep and dark blue sea. Some of the earliest human settlements on Maui were right in this area. Now, as the road begins to climb away from the coast and into the green forests of eucalyptus trees and the lush pastures of Ulupalakua, we have come to the end of our journey. We're almost back in the civilized world again, but the experiences we've shared along the Hana Coast will last a lifetime. The video you have just seen has described a very special part of Hawaii called the Hana Coast. One of its principal narrators, Tiny Malaikini, passed away when we were in the final stages of editing. A big man in every way, Tiny's abundant being embodied a kind gentleness and a love for his fellow man that only the word aloha can adequately describe. It is with this same spirit of aloha that this video is dedicated to Tiny and his family and to all the people of the Hana Coast.